All right, well, the auto industry has been at the center of Trump's tariff discussions for years, and this week's developments have created further challenges and uncertainties. Joining us now to discuss is Edison Yu, U.S. autos analyst at Deutsche Bank. Edison, let's just start with how you and your team have tried to understand this week's news, its impact on your coverage, and let's just start kind of with the big three there, Ford, GM, and then, of course, Tesla.
Yeah. So I think there's kind of two elements to this. One is you have prices that are going to go up. And how do you deal with that? And there's really no short-term solutions. I think you've probably heard many people say the supply chain is very interconnected. And I think that's a really structural issue that the automakers will have to figure out. The second element is, which is much, much longer term, is what does auto production in the US look like? Is it going to be more akin to something like China, where 90%, 95% of the parts are sourced domestically? Is it going to be lots and lots of robots and automation? We don't really know. And those are kind of 5-10-year decisions. So there's just a tremendous amount of uncertainty, both in the near term, midterm, and long term. And trying to put numbers around that is very, very difficult.
All right, two-part question for you, Edison. First, are we going to end up with taxes on parts going back and forth across the border at the end of the day? Second, a little bit of a bigger question. NAFTA, or the USMC, is really about two ecosystems. One's autos, the other's food. Are we going to end up with two separate trade agreements, one with Mexico, one with Canada, having differing rules? And how would you go about viewing that?
Yeah, so the reality is no one knows. And I wish I could offer you some deep insight that I've had with discussion with the administration. It's simply no one knows. We've talked to multiple suppliers, we've talked to multiple OEMs, and all this is being discussed behind the scenes and trying to be hashed out, but no one really knows. If I were to guess, I do think there will be some type of exemption carve out for NAFTA or USMCA, and if that happens, obviously the D3. GM, Ford, and even Stellantis would benefit that relative to the Asian and European OEMs, but we really don't know. I think more generally, in terms of having multiple kind of like spheres or systems, it's really a structural question. And I think it goes far, far actually beyond autos. It's really about localizing multiple supply chains in the US, and auto is just kind of a poster child for it because it showcases kind of how vulnerable it is if you leave the country. So I think both great questions. Unfortunately, we can only offer kind of guesses into what will happen, but those
all there,
are preliminary thinking.
Edison, Cory Johnson here. Since Joe with a two-part question, let me give you the same. And I'm curious about what this means for the used car market. And I wonder if there's going to bifurcation. So what does this mean for the used car market, number one? But number two, is there a bifurcation in the used car market where the vehicles that are facing higher tariffs and higher increases in the new cars will pass over to the used cars? Will my used Porsche garner a much higher price than a used Ford or something?
Yes. So prices are going up. We've done a tremendous amount of math around some scenarios. I mean, you're probably looking at anywhere from 5% to even 15%. Now, will the consumer absorb all that hit? Probably not, right? As an OEM, you're probably going to absorb some of it. Dealers have pretty decent margins. They may take some of the hit. So what is the net impact, the net margin, net price increase? It's a bit tricky to say, but I think you're looking at something at least 5%. And so if new car prices go up,
domestic vehicles.
Yes.
But I'm saying, like,
yes.
is a used German car, a purely German car or whatever, that is going to face the highest tariffs, are those used vehicles going to also increase at a double-digit rate?
Yeah. I think, if you look at historically, right, new car prices go up. I think it will drag up, especially in this case, used car prices. I don't know if it will happen all in sequential order, right? Because you're going to see a big surge in demand, right, for the next month or so. And you've seen Ford, GM, Stellantis, some of these automakers come out with some discounts. So I don't know if your Porsche is going to go up immediately that much, but I think over time it will absolutely appreciate.
Porsche buyers DM me now. Sorry, but
I was just
asking
gonna
for a
say,
friend.
yeah, well, we'll check back in a few months, see how Cory did with that. Edison, last one I want to chat here on an Elon Musk specific question around the Tesla story, and news out earlier this week that Musk is looking at kind of paring back his responsibilities with the government, focusing maybe a little more on Tesla. I'm curious how your team thought about that part of the story over the last few months. Certainly there's the demand side, the fundamental side for Tesla, but stock was down 50%, and it took a while till we started to see Musk, he had that all hands, whatever that was 2 weeks ago. I'm just curious how you think about his leadership, his role, where that story is at right now.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? You mentioned stock is obviously down a lot. I mean, you also have to keep in mind how much it went up after Trump won, right? So it's a double-edged sword. It can work for you, tremendously work against you. I think right now, there's other issues to deal with, right? The volume you may have seen has been quite weak. It seems to be turning around, at least in some parts of the world. They got some new models coming, including what we call the Model Q. So there's a lot of elements here. And I think the politics is certainly an overhang, but it's not the only driver of some of the stock weakness. You also got a robotaxi day coming up in June, or a robotaxi launch coming up in June. So the Tesla mosaic, I wish I could just point to the politics and blame it on that, but I think there's actually multiple drivers for the weakness recently in the stock. And let's say the politics kind of, settles down a little bit, you still got to deliver on, 2-3 other things.
All right, we'll leave it there. Really appreciate the time. Edison Yu, U.S. Autos Analyst with Deutsche Bank.
Thank you.